Hello everyone, I'm Jeremy Jakin and welcome to Wild West China. Today I'm going to talk about a motorcycle trip I did from Chengdu, China to the Laos border through southern Sichuan and Yunnan Province and then back to Chengdu. So Chengdu is located in the middle of China, and from there I headed through Yunnan Province. So most of this video is about the popular areas in Yunnan, basically. Not that I love the touristy areas, but the roads in between there are amazing. And some of those towns are worth seeing, so if you're interested in that part of China, Yunnan Province is amazing because it's on the border of Myanmar, Laos, Vietnam, near Thailand. And so you've got 27 different ethnic groups and a few really interesting places like Lugu Lake, Lijiang, Dali, Xishuangbanna, Kunming, and some other places. On this trip I didn't go to Shangri-La or Tiger Leaping Gorge, but I'll talk about that a little bit too. And of course I'll talk a little bit about the various ethnic groups in the area. Of course I won't go into all 27, or there's actually over 30 if you include Sichuan and stuff. But I'll briefly go through a little bit of that. So the trip was about 3,600 kilometers or 2,200 miles, and that was over 15 days. I took 3 days off, so that's averaging about 300 kilometers a day or 200 miles a day, which is pretty good because you can't bring motorcycles on highways in China pretty much. So these are all windy roads, so that's a pretty good time. That's definitely all day riding. So this is the motorcycle I use. I actually got it imported from the States. It's a Harley Davidson. With all the taxes and things I had to spend, it was around just under $1 million US. And it's a 4-stroke and a 250. And I got that, about over 4 years ago. So it's treated me really well. I hope you guys can catch the sarcasm throughout my videos. So I took off around February 12th. And around this time of year, it's actually still pretty cold west of Chengdu in the mountains, which is another reason why I headed south. Actually, this pic is from last spring. The snow at the top of the passes doesn't clear maybe until almost May in the mountains west of Chengdu. I had some friends around the same time go on trips, and they hit a lot of snow and ice, so I definitely didn't want to head out there. I first headed down towards Lushan to Ermeishan, which is a popular tourist area. It's not really my thing because it's you got to take buses inside, and it seemed like a tourist nightmare, but I had just stayed in that town nearby. So I actually lucked out with accommodation on this trip. Usually during Chinese New Year, which is the time I was traveling, is when the entire country is traveling, so you can imagine that. There's literally hundreds of millions of people around the country traveling. So prices for hotel rooms and stuff are 2, 3, 4 times higher than usual. But I lucked out the whole trip. I had really cheap stuff just because, the good thing about being on a motorcycle, you can go out of like the touristy areas and stuff, or go down the road a little bit and find stuff like that. And I even planned on camping much more, but as I'll mention later, that didn't work out as well as I planned. So I woke up and was happy to hit the road, and then I realized my trip was over. I'm not sure why they have that sign. Maybe this area is like the Area 51 of China. And all these aliens started showing up in town, going to the bars, taking all the women. The local people probably just got tired of it and kicked them all out. I have no idea. But if you do need permission, I'm sure it's not that bad. I know if I think of paperwork in China in general, I'm sure you just need to go into an office and say, "Pretty please," and you'll be able to get the permission if you do need to go. So anyway, if you can get through there, you can go to Daduhe Canyon Park, which obviously is a pretty cool spot. Great for motorcycle or bike traveling. I did actually have the cops last summer pick me up in the town Jinkao and drive me to the other side of town. So you might want to be a little careful in that area. I'm not sure why they don't want foreigners there. There is a big dam at the other end. I don't see the big deal with that. I mean, if you have Google Earth, you can see all of that stuff, and I'm sure the CIA and stuff has probably much better resources than a dude on a bike going through there. But or they're making something sensitive in that town, but I don't know why they would if there's a huge dam. Like, you wouldn't do that downstream. Who knows? I don't really know. I'll try to ask and figure that out, though, in the future. So you continue on and pass by a reservoir toward Hanyuan, which is okay for foreigners and stuff. And don't forget to get lunch. You know, when you see that on the side of the road, it's time to stop. Sorry if you're getting a little hungry watching that. So I continued on over a pass. It was about 2,500 meters, I think. So actually not that high for this area. It's about less than 8,000 feet. It was obviously cold, and there was some ice and snow like on the trees and on the side of the road, but luckily the roads were clear. So I figured I'd actually camp on the trip more, and it was towards the evening. I needed to find a spot. It's hard in canyons, because obviously it's really narrow, and most of the areas, if you could cultivate it, you would, or people would live there. So I finally had to set up, and then I realized I didn't have my sleeping air mattress. So not really the best situation, especially because I was a little bit sick. I left town kind of sick, and I was cold. I think it was either that day or the next day I'd ate some bad food, so definitely not the best feeling. And as you can imagine, those rocks are super comfortable to lay on at night. I did get lucky. They aren't the regular rocks that are like pieces of glass in your back. They're the foam ones, super, super soft. Just, I didn't even realize I didn't have my air mattress. It was so comfortable. So the next major area I passed by on my trip was Xichang, which is a decent-sized city, but there's a really nice lake there. It's kind of touristy. But the good thing is they did close most of the roads off to like mainstream traffic, so you could like ride a bike around most of the lake and not have to deal with all the traffic. And it's not quite as nice as Lugu Lake, which is my next stop, but it's definitely worth checking out if you're in that area. It's got nice weather and a great barbecue. So most of the people in southern Sichuan in Yunnan and Guizhou, which is next to Yunnan, are the E people. And they're the 6th largest ethnic group in China out of 56. So there's about 8 million or so around that area. So most of the people I saw were E people. And they're kind of interesting. They have obviously a completely different religion and different language and everything different than like the Han Chinese. So in a lot of these areas, you can see the signs have 2 different kinds of characters. The white ones there are the Chinese Mandarin, and then those yellow ones above there are the local language. So they have different rituals for marriage and stuff. In some areas, they actually like kidnap the wife, and like the guy takes her on a horse and brings her back, and but it's like kind of staged because they know what's going to happen. And actually the E people also practice slavery. There's actually a decent museum you could go to in Xichang that has actually pretty good English and translations and stuff about all of the history of that. I assume that was something only white males did, so that was interesting to me. They were also naturally against the the communist government coming in at the time and taking over. So there was a huge uprising in the 50s, and tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people died. I'm not sure the numbers. There's not much information on that stuff. They had tons of guns back then, and it seemed like every village had guns and tons of ammunition and stuff. But that is when the government did stop slavery at that time. So there was slavery up until I guess the late 1950s or so. So there's obviously a lot I can go into. I'll have to do that obviously in other videos. I'll go more into the minorities of the area. There's tons of different things. Like they believe in 2 souls. Like there's one or multiple souls. One that stays at the grave, another that's reincarnated and stuff. So anyway, I'll do more on that later. So the next spot I got to was Lugu Lake, which is really nice. Definitely still really touristy. It's actually the border of Yunnan and Sichuan Province. So the northern side is Sichuan, the southern side is Yunnan. And the area around there is super remote. You don't have like a big city like you have like in Xichang, for instance.
So the local people in this area are the Mosuo people, and they're quite famous because it's a matriarchal society. So the women um, are kind of in charge, you could say, of the family duties, and the inheritance goes through them. So they handle all the finance and stuff, and a lot of the decisions in the family. So it's a little bit complex as far as their arrangements with marriage and stuff, but they have something called like a walking marriage, and this is where like a guy comes at night with permission, of course, and can stay with them until the morning and even have kids. And so the father doesn't raise the kids; it's like the woman's brother. So the uncles raise the kids, and so the women are. I guess it's not that they're necessarily promiscuous, but they're, I guess, more open to do more things that are not common within more traditional cultures around the world. So that's kind of what they're famous for. It's more complex than that. Like I said, I'll have to do more research and stuff later and give you guys more on some of those things, but that's what it's known for. So if you say that the whole world is a patriarchy, you can't say so. There is one lake in one little town or one little region of China where it's a matriarchy. So I got back on the road and headed over towards Lijiang. I took a back road there, so a few parts were under construction or a little beat up, but that's not always a bad thing because those are the roads where there's no cars and no one goes, so it's kind of nice and peaceful. You don't have to worry about the traffic and stuff like that as much, and you still get awesome views. So not too far from these mountains, I think just over this area a bit, is Tiger Leaping Gorge, which is an amazing gorge that you could get through possibly this back road or through Lijiang. It's only, I don't know, like an hour and a half or a couple hours away or something. Maybe not even that. But there's some great like hiking trails back there. People go for like a week hiking or a few days. Or you could bike it in a day. It's not that far. You could bike through, I think it's, I don't know, maybe it's like 50 Ks or something. I don't remember now. But so that's something extra to check out if you're in that area. And then past that is Shangri-La. And that's also an amazing area. That's another, I don't know, 150 kilometers up it's the very northwest tip of Yunnan Province. And it's a Tibetan area. So it's about 4,000 meters high or so, and that's also an awesome area. We've got some like nice temples, Tibetan temples, and stuff like that up there. So if you do have a little extra time, you could go up there, and even past there, there's some neat things. You could go into Sichuan Province from there to Daocheng or to Dechin, and there's tons of neat stuff. So if you do want to go to Tibet, you're supposed to have like a tour guide and all this special permits. It costs a ton of money because you need to have like an SUV tour pretty much. So when I did it on bike, I went through the main border of Yunnan and Tibet at nighttime when the guards and all the people are sleeping, and you could go through then. I don't know how that is now. That was a while ago, but I imagine there's still ways in, and but that's basically the way you can do it. I don't think you'd easily get through there. If you go through on a motorcycle, you need a tour, same thing and all this paperwork. So just know that you can't freely travel into Tibet. So I continued down the road, and the next major area I got to is Lijiang City, or Lijiang Old Town. And that's a super popular place in China in general. Actually, probably the most popular spot I got to so far on the trip. Like Xichang or Lugu Lake is nothing compared to Lijiang or Dali. But the good thing is that you can get on like some back alleys there. Like there's a main area in the ancient town where most of the people are, and it's not like laid out like a square, like north, south, west, east. It's all very hilly, so everything's kind of like a maze, narrow alleys here and there. So you can get away from the crowds at least. I know when I was there, it was kind of nice. You can kind of get off the beaten track a bit. And especially in the morning, there weren't too many people out in the morning when I went there. It's not a big area. I mean, it's probably only a square mile. So obviously there's plenty of restaurants to get good food, and these food courts are great because obviously you can see what you're getting right there. And I imagine a lot of the restaurants have English menus if they're the bigger ones, but obviously the smaller ones probably won't. So here you can kind of pick and choose some different things. I know when I'm hungry in the morning, I just grab a bag of grasshoppers and caterpillars and just hit the mountains, and it gives me tons of energy. It's great. But if you've had your fill of grasshoppers and beetles and you want to try something a little bit more from home, you can always hit up Pizza Hut or KFC. And you know, those golden arches aren't too far away. And as you can imagine, the McDonald's, KFC, and Pizza Hut is just as old as the ancient city itself. So it's about, 800 years or so. Despite popular opinion, it actually wasn't Marco Polo who was one of the first foreigners to China. It was Ronald McDonald. And on his second voyage, he brought Colonel Sanders, and they established the first McDonald's and KFC. And then later it was Marco Polo who came and established one of the first Pizza Huts in the region. You can actually pay them extra money to use one of the original grills that's like 800 or 900 years old in the McDonald's there, if you pay a ridiculous amount of money. But I've heard it's definitely one of the best burgers you can have in your life, and maybe even better than grasshoppers. So it's easy to get outside the city if you want to go hiking and stuff. Jade Dragon Snow Mountain is about 30 kilometers north of there. And if you do go into that park, you do have to pay a fee. I think it's like $20 or $25. And also, I didn't mention Lugu Lake actually has a fee of $20 or $25, just so you know. But there's some good hikes back in that area and all around the city. So the local people in the region are the Nashi people. They practice something called a Dongba religion, which is influenced from Tibetan Bon religion. So it's pretty much something between like nature and man. So very heavy emphasis on nature and conservation. So before the communist rule, for instance, they didn't even practice logging and cutting down trees for the most part. That was only in a special occasion, like in the summer in July. They could do very limited logging and stuff like that. So I luckily met up with some friends of mine, British guy and some Americans, and some other Chinese people for the New Year. They had a big barbecue and stuff, which was nice. During this time of year, the Chinese families basically go back to their hometown for like a reunion, and of course big feasts and tons of drinking and stuff. The children get hong baos, or red envelopes of money, basically. And it's over about 2 weeks. There's different things they do on certain days, like there's like a lantern festival and different things, and there's at that time they eat like rice balls and different things. And of course there's a lot of fireworks during this time, and they do that because it's kind of to scare away the omens. There's like a story of a Nian or something that came out in winter time because there wasn't that much food, and they would eat the crops or like the children. So they use these fireworks to like scare them away. I think that's like originally where it came from. So next I headed south the next day towards Dali. It's a nice road down there, about 175 kilometers. And Dali's a nice place. It's another really popular place like Lijiang. To the west, you have some nice mountains of town, and then the east is Arhai Lake, which is a big lake. I don't know how big it is around, probably 100-some kilometers, so really big lake. And Dali is an important part of history in that region. I guess even like around the year 1000, it was like the 13th biggest city in the world or something. So obviously at different time periods, there was different groups that had controlled the area and stuff, but so that's why it's kind of more like a walled city, and maybe more important for like defenses and stuff like that at the time. But it was a little too crowded when I was there, and I got there midday, so I just continued this trip. But I've been there several times before, and obviously just like Lijiang in the center, it can be really touristy and stuff, and tons of people. You could get out of that area, and that lake's huge, so there's a lot of little nice towns. Like if you go down the east side, there's like smaller villages and nice places to stay, and you still get to see some interesting architecture and local people. The local people in that region are the Bai people, So I continued headed south down towards a place called Xishuangbanna, and as you go down there, you're really close to the Myanmar border. And the people down there, about a third of the people are Dai people, which are related to Thai and Laos people. So you can see the architecture in that area is different. You almost feel, in some ways, like you're in Thailand or Laos in those areas. So I stopped at the Laos border for a visa run. Then I headed north and passed through Pu'er town or city, and that's where they make Pu'er tea. It's a fermented black tea, a really dark one. Like it actually looks like black coffee or something. So Pu'er tea is also known to promote weight loss. I don't know if that's actually true. If it is, I should probably start drinking a couple gallons a week. But that area is really nice. There's a lot of terraced fields and rice terraces and stuff too, especially if you're closer to Vietnam. So southeast Yunnan, like just a couple hundred kilometers from where I was at, there's amazing rice terraces. The Yuanyang rice terrace and some other cool stuff. So if you're coming up from Vietnam around there, you can check out the rice terraces. So my next and last big stop is Kunming, which is the capital or the biggest city in Yunnan Province, and also the first city I lived in China. So Kunming's a nice place. You first come up to Dianshi Lake. That's on the south side of the city, and it's almost as big as Arhai Lake, the one next to Dali, probably about 100 kilometers around. But unfortunately got really polluted, so it's nowhere like you could go swimming. But if you do go just southeast of there, there's another huge lake called Fuxian Lake, and that's super clean, and that's a good spot if you want to get to a lake close to Kunming. So Kunming's a great place. I did enjoy my time there. The people are friendly and the food's good and stuff, but it still feels like you're in a really countryside kind of city. Even though it's 4 or 5 million people, it's still pretty undeveloped. But there's some nice areas around town. Wenlin Jie, Wenlin Street, like Foreigner Street basically, is an area that's kind of popular. Some bars and stuff. So they do have some old parts of town, just a small section you can check out. It's near the shopping streets and Jinma Biji in the center of town, basically. So Green Lake is also another popular spot right in the center of town, or a little north of the center. And there's some old buildings around there, and that's where people hang out in the day. So a good place to go down to if you like to go fly a kite. Do a little gambling, get a little bit of a massage, or my favorite, I like to go down there for a couple hours and just do the Chinese Macarena. But if the Chinese Macarena is not your thing, you could always head down and have a few drinks in the evening. There's a couple popular new bars down in that way, so that might be more your thing. So it was nice to catch up with some old friends for a couple days, and then I took off and started my 900 kilometer trip back, which I actually did in just 2 days, so I really pushed it. I was pretty tired at that point because I already spent most of that first week or so pretty sick, so I was definitely ready to head back home for sure. I'm not sure if that's for a Chinese New Year dinner, but that pig's definitely lived a good life because it's about 3 times bigger than that lady. So I finally got home after 15 days. It was a great trip. There's always a big risk with any of these kinds of trips, but it's always worth it if you get home safe and in one piece. Yunnan's certainly a great place to go. If you want to see some of the best sights in China. Obviously, there's some amazing sights and scenery here and great food. Or if you just want to smoke a cigarette out of a bong in a parking lot, you could do that too. So I hope you enjoyed the video. It's the first one I've made besides my introduction on YouTube before. So I hope it was worth your time. And if you like it, share, subscribe. And if you're interested in coming to this area and you're interested in a bike tour, I do bike tours in this area, like the trip from Xichang down to Dali, and trips near Chengdu down to Xichang and other places in Sichuan. So you can check out my website below, and I'll have some other links there. So hope to see you guys again soon. Take care.